You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Let's talk about associate cricket, Jenny, because as I mentioned before, and as you mentioned, nearly all the countries that you visited on your tour are associate countries within cricket. Mm-hmm. They're one of the 96 members of the ICC. And on the podcast, Jenny, you would know, and others who are listening, that late last year we started an associate cricket series on the podcast. Mm-hmm. We've spoken to many good people from many of these great countries that play associate cricket or part of international cricket as an associate country. We've spoken to Bertus de Jong, the journalist in the Netherlands. We've spoken to Andrew Nixon. He's a writer about European cricket. Craig White from Mexico. Brazil, Matt Featherston and Roberta, Moretti Avery. Japan, Alan Kerr. And Captain Kendall Katawaki Fleming, who's the captain of the Japan men's team. And Peter Della Penna, which I'm sure you would know from ESPN Cricket, journalist on US cricket. That was great to chat to him. So we've spoken to those people thus far, and there's more episodes coming in the near future. And the reason I started it was to promote it because associate cricket, to bring awareness to it, but also to understand the stories of the people behind the scenes, you know, and the players from those countries that really commit themselves to promoting cricket because they put a lot of hours in and they're very passionate. And I've learned a lot from listening to them and hearing them speak passionately about what they're doing. And there's some really good, passionate people out there. And they want to promote cricket and grow it and change people's lives in those countries, which they are. Most of the countries that are a part of the associate members of the ICC, all of them, not all of them, but some of them come from very poor backgrounds, undeveloped countries, etc. So cricket does have a way of changing people's lives. And Jenny, you would agree that the two biggest challenges are, first of all, funding and growing and developing the game. Many associate countries find this problem out, and it's a very difficult problem to face. Given how international cricket is at the moment with the distribution model of the revenue and the funds, it could be better. And whenever I ask this question to people from this series that I've done, they've always said the same thing. We just need money and funding, and we need facilities, and we need support because we can't do it all on our own. So we need the cricketing community to help us, and always get the same answer to that question. So many cricket boards have to ask themselves, how do we get cricket into the community? How do we promote it, spruik it? How do we get it into schools to encourage students to go to school when you play a sport like cricket or something? That's been the case in some countries where they use that as an incentive to go to school, and that, which is a good program to do. Making cricket accessible to everyone. You go down to your local park. We take that for granted here in Australia. You go down to your park and there's a net and a pitch. Whereas in other countries, there's no turf wickets. There's no artificial wickets. They play on football grounds. Like in South America, they do. Most of the grounds there are football grounds because that's a popular sport in those countries. So all these questions that people have to ask themselves. So Jenny, what have you noticed about how these associate countries go about developing and growing cricket in their country from your tour thus far? And do you think as a cricket community, we should do more to help these associate nations out?
Brilliant questions. And I would also like just to say that your summary there of all the challenges faced by associate cricket is bang on. So, what was the first question? What have I what have I noticed?
What have you noticed from touring these countries? What have you noticed about these countries growing cricket and developing in their own country and communities?
Okay, yeah. So number one, I've noticed that the more successful countries, this is a direct correlation and it shouldn't be any surprise, have the best leaders, the ones who are able to engage others, take on board all the ideas, implement them. They've got great relationships with local stakeholders, government, local government people, etc. So we can look at Brazil and Japan. You've spoken with Alan as well. They're quite analogous, and they're often compared with each other, and for good reason. So that's important. Yeah, absolutely, the funding is a huge issue, but then it's not just the comparative lack of funding, it's then how the funding is used, which can be problematic, or it can be very creative. Definitely getting into schools is certainly key. I've noticed that there's a lot of reinventing the wheel as I've gone along. I've spoken with lots of people and I've said, oh, but did you know they're doing this over here? No. Did you know that? No. And I know there's often ICC conferences bringing people together, but to me, it's a little bit like, where's the information sharing? And I'm happy to fill that void and give people contacts, put people into touch with each other, because I'm interested in the development of the game. But, you know, sometimes I think it would be good to have a little bit more joined up thinking, maybe. But one thing that I have noticed, which you did definitely mention, is the ridiculous, boundless passion for cricket that particularly the people who run the boards have. So many people are volunteers, like the vast majority. And, you know, for example, in Korea, Nasser Khan is heavily involved there. And he said to me, you know, I'm trilingual, have all these business skills. My friends have told me for years I should be making money, but cricket's in my blood, it's in my heart, you know, and he's just out there doing everything all the time. He'll mark the lines, he'll, you know, umpire, he'll arrange things way above his remit. And this is just so replicated around the world. But at the same time, I think it actually incenses me. Trying to keep understated about this, the distribution model. It's so ridiculous. It's so wrong. And, you know, I always like value for money, right? Who doesn't? And I look at how much a dollar can buy in one country versus another, and the diminishing marginal returns. Like, to me, if India has an extra $1 million, well, it's not going to make a difference, right, to their cricket. Yeah. But that $1 million can change entirely an associate country's landscape. You've mentioned facilities and the lack of. It's very, very striking when I go around. Like, for example, in my first 20 countries, I needed spikes in one country. And then, you know, I get back to Australia and people don't turn up to nets on a Wednesday night because, you know, they're just sitting on the sofa instead of just whatever. I want to scream to them, but it's not my place. But I do. I want to say, guys, don't you understand? You're so lucky to have, well, practice facilities, but also grass ones. These have been curated so magnificently for you. Look, you know, or if I'm just driving around and I just like look at the local club, I'm like, there's 3 grass pitches. You know, it's really, the contrast is so striking. And I think that leads into your second question about, is the onus on, you know, the full member countries to do much more? Absolutely it is, in terms of advocating for more funding, which might be a bit of a pipe dream because of the power situations going on there. But nevertheless, you may as well ask. But also in terms of education, one country in Europe, which I won't name, suggested to me that it would be nice if the ECB helped a little bit more the European countries. And I know Australia helps out with PNG and other countries in the Pacific, but I think there needs to be a lot more of that. And also, I was only talking today with my friend who helped me get up some donations when we went to Indonesia last year. She doesn't even play cricket, but she arranged a whole kit bag because that's the kind of person she is. But, you know, I was just like, I know there are a few organizations which collect donated kit from people, but again, the amount of wastage that we have with our own kit over here, you know, it needs to be redistributed overseas. And yet, for having said both of those things, I understand it's slightly a bit out of sight, out of mind, but also it's a little bit, well, maybe the countries with, you know, the associate countries, maybe, I don't know if they've approached, say, the ECB to help. You know, maybe if they said to the ECB, we could do with this, would you mind helping us? Could you send us some coaches? Could you do this? Could you do that? Then there might be a little bit more engagement. And that's not to say that the ECB do nothing, because I certainly know they do. And also they've got their own problems, but and situations that they're trying to develop. But I mean, in some ways, this is broadly aligned to, if you look at foreign aid in any country and all the pros and cons of that, it's quite analogous to me. But to me, it just makes sense to help the other countries grow the game, because to me, it's a situation of equity, and the more people who can participate in this game, the better it is for their lives. You know, cricket literally changes lives. Like, I had 10 years out of the game. I didn't realize that cricket had such a beneficial impact on my mental health until I came back and realized what I'd been missing in all that time. And that's what really elevated me into a very passionate advocate for participation. And you mentioned with people with disabilities as well, that's critical. Everybody should have access to cricket, whether they choose to continue with cricket or not, because it's more than a sport. It's life skills, it's social skills, it's mental well-being, it's self-esteem, it's everything that participating in a team game can give you. So I would love so much to see so much more assistance given to the associates, because again, their struggles are analogous to what I've seen in women's cricket throughout my life, even in the country that invented cricket, which actually is quite disgusting. But, you know, we can only look at where we are now, and it's all so much more positive, and it's going even more in the right direction. But really, it's not that hard to make a huge difference to these associate countries. And I've heard several associate countries like just say, well, we're not seen as important because, you know, the participation in our country is low, it's a minor sport, it's this and that. But that to me is, it's not a backwards way of thinking, but it's a not helpful way of thinking, because if you're not growing the sport or putting your efforts in, or there's no funding to do that, then how are you meant to do it? And this is what a lot of the people who run the boards tell me. You know, we're told we have to create all this sponsorship, but we're actually too busy just trying to run cricket in the first place and jump through some hoops in a certain way. it would be like cricket is the second biggest sport in the world in terms of participation. And I think, it's easy to look at the BCCI and criticize them for taking the power and the money and all that. But at the same time, it's predominantly Indian expats who love the game so much, who have taken it around the world and helped it grow. So I don't know. It's just, and like it's the fastest growing sport for women in Asia. There's so many things that's good, but I love also like India helping Nepal out, that sort of thing. We need to see much more of it. But at this point, I don't know whether it would happen because, just listening to the leaders tearing their hair out, and often you get the situation where those people from whichever country, they can't speak out because they'll be marginalized or penalized, whereas obviously someone like me, I can speak out because I don't have to answer to anyone actually, which is quite liberating. But also just, I think, it's how these political systems end up, and they defy logic half the time, situations, but that's just how they are. And then you say, well, let's take a step back. Let's bring some logic into the situation. And to you and I, it's so clear. And to every single associate country, when you go round, you said we just need funding, we need facilities. And then, of course, you got the upkeep of the facilities. But, cross that bridge when you get to it. But to me, there's no reason why the pie can't be divided a different way. But yeah, I understand that it won't be, and the reasons that it won't be. So it's always complex, and it's really frustrating because from the outside, it seems so obvious. But, again, it's one of those things, is it worth the investment because is the interest there? Well, the interest generally isn't there because the media doesn't cover it as much. Why doesn't the media cover it as much? Because the interest isn't there. And again, it's that vicious circle, which could just be so easily changed. But, as with everything, it always seems very easy from the outside. The match always looks very easy when you're sitting in the crowd. So I'm not saying that there's not a lot of passionate people in the ICC or even in the main full member boards advocating for those kinds of things, but often you need the right decision makers or the critical mass to make the difference. But I tell you what, I'm very, very hopeful that change can be made, and anything that I can do in my small way to make a difference, then I certainly will. Because often I'll go to these countries and people will say, well, nobody cares about us because we're sort of tucked in the middle of the, far away geographically from the centers of power, and nobody cares. And then I say, well, I care. I'm here. I can tell you a story. And yes, it may just be me at the moment, but, this is also the same for women's cricket. By the time I've finished, I'm going to have like a pretty huge testimony from around the world as to what's going on and how people are feeling about it. And, it'll be interesting to see the reactions to that and see if any change comes from it. And even if it doesn't, then, I've tried my bit to make that difference. But, it can't just be me, and it can't just be you, and it can't just be these isolated boards. It takes a lot of people to come and stand together. And on that note, I know like Afghanistan are not an associate country, but seriously, what is going on with them still being funded? Like, that is just it's so wrong, and it needs the full members and all of the members to really stand up and say that is not acceptable, because that is a huge inequity that is allied to the associate issue, but not exactly the same. But you and I could talk about inequitable situations in cricket and life for the rest of the year. But, sorry, I just went off on a little bit of a rant there, but
now that's
I
right,
get
Jenny.
very passionate. I get very passionate about
Yes.
inequity, really. Inequity. I think everybody deserves a chance.
Yes.
And in this case, a chance to participate in cricket. It happens to be, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I share the same sentiments. It's good to rant and be frustrated. I think the ICC have lost sight of that. What's the purpose of a governing body? Is to promote and grow and develop the sport in all parts of the world. That's your job. Even the ICC have that as their motto and mission statement. And they're not even doing that. So is that hypercritical of them? It probably is. But doing this series myself has been liberating. I've learned something new because, let's be honest, I've been used to the mainstream cricket stuff for years because I'm from Australia. You're from England, you'll share the same views. But when you learn about associate countries, you learn about the people who put in the 9 to 5 hours, backbreaking work, wanting to get something up. And the stories that I've heard from the people I've spoken to have just been amazing.
Yes.
And the programs that they're doing, the passionate people, they always say afterwards when we finish speaking, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be on your podcast, to give us a platform and a voice, because we're not heard sometimes.
That's right.
And that feels yes, that feels quite emotional, but proud. I'm proud that I can, in my own sort of way, help out these countries and get the word out there. But I think the ICC have lost sight of that. I think we can't be selfish. We have to look after others. And in the cricketing community, as we've talked about in this chat, we got to give back. And I always have a saying, Jenny, is that the game doesn't owe us anything, but we owe the game. And we do. We owe the game immensely. So volunteer at your local club, be an umpire, be a scorer, volunteer at your club. If you've got unwanted cricket kit, and that was a great point that you raised there, donate it. Donate it to someone who's less fortunate than you, who wants to play cricket. Let them have a bat. Let them have pads and a helmet, because it's very expensive in this current climate. Or donate it to someone from an associate country. Yeah, have my kit back. I don't need it. I've got a new one. And that's absolutely right. We do take those things for granted here in Australia and in full member countries. And that's a brilliant point that you raised there, Jenny. And I never thought of it until you mentioned it. And I was like, yeah, you're spot on there. We do take things for granted. And these associate countries, think about it. They don't have indoor facilities, so they can't play when it's raining. Like we can when it's raining, we can play indoors, but they don't. And they don't have good pitches, they don't have synthetic turf. They don't have turf. They don't have nets. You can't even go to a sports shop in those countries and buy a cricket ball or cricket equipment, because no one's heard of a stump or a bat or a helmet. But that's starting to change, and hopefully it will continue to change as we keep advocating for this. But it's, as you said, it's the powers to be. It's for them to change their mindset. And you say, you know what? Maybe we are neglecting associate cricket a bit here. Maybe we should do the good thing as a cricket citizen, is to help out. And some cricket boards are doing that. You have some passionate people on boards, but other people just think about themselves and the profits and the money, which really frustrates me. It's like talking to a brick wall, the ICC sometimes. Nothing responsive at all. Just, no, that's it. We'll just brush that aside at the next meeting. We won't vote against that. Associate members don't have full voting rights, as an example. So they don't have a say. They get outvoted on any issue or any topic that gets discussed at a meeting. So that's my little rant there, Jenny, that I've wanted to get out. Because, we can do better and we should do better. And at the moment, we're not quite doing that. And I think many people who are listening would share the same views and sentiments about that. And I often get that from people who are watching this associate cricket series on the podcast. They often say that, and say, yeah, keep up the good work because we need to learn more about associate cricket. And you put in the time and money into it. A prime example, like the Netherlands, they defeated South Africa twice in 2 World Cups, T20 World Cup, 50 over World Cup last year in India. Look what Ireland did in 2007 in the Caribbean. They had some good victories over there. So if you put the money in the time in and invest, you can have great results. It's sort of the thing. I know it's a little bit off topic. It's not associate cricket, but the West Indies winning in Brisbane recently.
Amazing.
The Gabba, Shamar Joseph taking 7 wickets. If you support the countries like the West Indies and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and these other countries that are doing it tough, you put the time and effort in, that's what you can get. That's the result you're going to get. You're going to get good cricket like that. And it changed people's lives. It certainly changed his life. 7 wickets to win a test match. And you saw Carl Hooper and Brian Lara burst into tears because it meant so much. So that's what we can achieve in cricket. And I hope we can achieve that in the near future. But it's up to the powers of B to decide that. Hi, everyone. Hope you enjoyed hearing Jenny and I discuss associate cricket.